I want to welcome everybody to the March Eye on Piscataway, and we have a very action-packed segments coming up for March. But while we're here in studio, I would like to mention that we do have the new public safety director for Piscataway Township, and his name is Keith Stith. So, Keith, you want to talk a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So, first of all, I want to.
And by the way, before he gets into talking about it right there. He wasn't just plucked out of cyberspace and dropped in Piscataway. No. So go ahead, Keith.
So, Mayor, first of all, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve the citizens of Piscataway. My name is Keith Stith. I've been in law enforcement for over 35 years. In fact, this is my 35th year. I began my law enforcement career at the Union County Sheriff's Office, worked there for a couple of years, had a real strong interest in doing investigations. Went to the Hudson County Prosecutor's Office. I served the citizens in Hudson County for over 28 years. I'm proud to say that I retired as a chief of detective. I was the first African American to ever accomplish that. Retired. Then I received a call. I was asked to come to Rochester of New York to help out. They had an incident up there that had a profound impact on the citizen and police. So again, I was asked to come up there and help out, and worked there for 2 years. I heard about this opportunity here in Piscataway. Wanted to come home, but also wanted to work in a diverse community as well, because I've been working in diverse communities for the last 30 years. So good to be here.
So you've been involved for law enforcement for more than 30 plus years. How has law enforcement changed since the day you first started out?
So it has changed a lot. And this is just my own personal philosophy. I just think that we need to think above and beyond traditional police methods, because every community is different. Rochester is different from Piscataway, different dynamics. So
and not only because they get about 100 inches of snow a year.
That's true too. But I just think that you really your police model has to be custom made towards the community that you're policing in. So it has changed. I just think that it's not a cookie cutter policing philosophy anymore. Every community is different. So you got to make the adjustment as a law enforcement executive.
So basically, in essence, that depending upon the size of the community that you're working in, it just every neighborhood's different in Piscataway. No different in a larger city where you have sections of boroughs or wards or whatever. Law enforcement has to tailor the needs of the individual neighborhoods.
Right. So it's important that we know the dynamics of our community. Policing means different things to different ethnic groups. And as law enforcement officers, we need to know and understand other cultures. I mean, obviously, Piscataway is a very diverse community. So as a police officer and as a law enforcement executive, we need to make sure our officers understand the different cultures within those ethnic groups.
What challenges does that present in law enforcement when there's, I guess, cultural differences? I know in some parts of the world, law enforcement and certain public servant positions are frowned upon.
Right.
In a culture that, they just, you're not encouraged to go that. But here in the States, it's a little bit different, but you have cultural differences that are where law enforcement is trying to deal with.
Right. So again, it's important that we understand our community. You bring up an excellent point. So when new Americans come to Piscataway, we need to make the effort and educate those new Americans on culture. For example, in some countries, you are taught not to look authoritative figures in the eye. In the police world, right, if I'm not looking in your eye, you think I'm being deceptive, right? So we need to spend that time and educate those community on culture here in America.
And I think that's a major challenge. The more diverse a community is, the more nuances there are. But then I also like to take a step back and view that as a positive step forward to career-wise for a challenge for the department.
True.
A positive challenge.
It's a positive challenge.
Yeah.
It's a way to recruit within that community. Because if you recruit from this diverse community, that culture is coming to your police department. You know, so it forces you to adjust. You know, like I said, there's different business model for every police department.
And like talking to some of your peers around the country, what challenges are they? I mean, Piscataway's not unique. What challenges do they have? Well,
the obvious challenge right now in policing is recruiting. Yeah. That's been a challenge. But I must say,
and I agree with that, because I know with my children, that generation, you know, they don't view law enforcement as a long-term career opportunity. Whereas I know I every chance I get, if I'm down at the high school or kids that are even in 8th grade, say, hey, listen, don't forget about local government service with law enforcement or public works or whatever, you know, because we're all getting older.
Right.
And there needs to be another generation that needs to think about the governmental end as a career path.
Right. So we have to do a better job at educating young folks on what is possible. You can't become it if you don't see it. Yeah. You know, so we had to go to those high schools and have those conversations on what's possible in this profession.
And I think that is one of the things that we need to do, is get more into the school system.
Absolutely.
To educate the young coming up the ranks, whether they stay living in Piscataway or not, when they grow as young adults or not. I mean, more than likely they'll stay for a while until they go off to college, or
correct,
depending upon what happens. So, but that is like a big recruiting tool. Huge tool that I think that is a major challenge for the PDs around the country.
Right. So, you know, one of the most best feeling I've ever had when I came out the police academy, and then you go back to your own community and police. You know, that's the best feeling in the world. So I would love to instill that feeling to our young people in this community. You know, take our examination. You know, be a police officer in your town. Not to sound cliche-ish, but you know, be the change you want to see. You know, have an impact on your community. But that's going to require some work.
And we had spoken about reaching out to the houses of worship.
Absolutely.
Here in town. Why the houses of worship?
So important. As you know, a lot of influence. Maybe Stith can't get to them, but creating that partnership with a pastor or imam, you know, maybe that could be my credible messenger, so to speak. So very, very important to have that relationship with our clergy community.
And we have a lot of faiths that are housed here in Piscataway. They call Piscataway home, and you know, it's just amazing the houses of worship that we have in our community here. And I think a lot of that has to do because we're also the home of Rutgers University, and the university tends to be an extremely diverse population, and that spills over. You do get a lot of students that ultimately end up having a career path doing something, and they end up deciding to settle down here in Piscataway.
Right.
And that leads to the uniqueness of our community, you know, through the corporate. What do you tell corporations and businesses? You know, are they part of the community when it comes to
They are part of the community. You know, when I was up in Rochester, as a community engagement event, we wanted to, at that particular time, our young people was committed, unfortunately, was committing most of the violence crime in the city. And I wanted to come up with a community engagement event, number one, to expose our young people to colleges. And number two, mainly to bring our community together. So I came up with an idea to bring an HBCU football classic up to Rochester.
Okay.
All right. That wouldn't have been possible if I didn't have support from my business community, because I had to knock on doors.
So why football?
Football.
And we're not talking football over in Europe. It's different than football.
No.
Just regular football.
We talk, and I was intentional. Our population, 54% of the population in Rochester are African American. So I was intentional. I got an HBCU to come up there, a historical black college and university, 2 teams to come and play a game. I thought that, again, to your question, why football? Football brings people together, you know, especially up there. You know, football is huge up there. So that was a way to bring people together. And then around the game, we had HBCU colleges come up there, and in fact, one of the schools gave out 3 scholarships at one of our events. Yeah. So again, I talked about earlier, thinking outside the box, thinking above and beyond traditional policing, specifically community engagement. You know, so we did that up there. That was real creative and innovative, and that's the type of mindset you got to have today in law enforcement.
So that worked out well with the young individuals within that community. Like taking, you know, down here in Piscataway, we actually have a lot more.
Yeah.
We have a tendency of running all of our rec programs are free of charge, and that's our way of getting the kids on. That's why I always tell parents and students around here, I don't ever want to hear a kid saying in our town that they're bored, there's nothing to do. Listen, there's so many avenues, whether it's the library or extracurriculum with the school district and or, you know, sports. You know, if a child wants to get involved and stay involved with a good influence of coaches and things like that, the avenue's there for them.
Yeah, I got to admit, so growing up in Hillside, we was a little bit envy of Piscataway.
Yeah.
You know, you guys, especially your sports program, and winning high school football teams and basketball teams and very good track teams. So I just wanted to throw that in. We have a little bit envy of Piscataway. So, yeah, you're right. You know, get our kids involved, and, you know, and sports is everything. You know, and you and the right people running those programs is important as well. You know, so
and that's why off the record, the rec department at PD have always, you know, there's always had a lot of coaches through the PD with some of the programming. It wasn't by design; it just naturally fell into place.
You have to work together. You know, it's community policing. You know, you and I just left the meeting, and my second meeting, we all going to be working together. You know, they're going to be a part of policing somehow, or we're going to be doing some type of collaboration. You know, so you have to work together.
So if you're a resident in the town, what do you say then? What are going to be your expectations moving forward with the police department?
So it's always been my belief that you cannot do policing alone, and policing is tough. And I think as a director of public safety, I charge you to take some of the burden of policing off of Piscataway Police Department, meaning that.
Well, when you mean that, then you mean, well, listen, we don't want the residents to go out and do policing. You want collaboration,
right? I don't. No, I'm not talking about operational. No, let me be clear. But
I just want to get that out there. I knew what you meant.
Right, but collaboration. You know, for example, you know, we talked about the challenge of recruitment and policing. You know what? Help me recruit. Help me recruit. You know.
Just so the viewers know that it's not just in Piscataway, but nationally. There is a recruitment problem, and the armed forces has the same problem.
Problem.
So it's not unique. I think it's a real generational thing that's going on.
It is a generational thing, but even though it's an issue, we still need to address it and do what we can to.
Because those positions still need to be filled.
They need to be filled. They need to be filled. They need to be filled. But again, that burden of recruitment, you know, I want to speak to our clergy and say, hey, listen, help me recruit. You know, help us find the best of the best in this town. You know, so I want to share that burden of community policing with our collaboration with our residents here.
Well, I think that's over the last couple of years. I mean, I know when the PD was trying to we normally would get our officers to alternate route. We might want to explain what alternate route policing is.
Alternate route. The alternate route program is a program where you could pay your way through the police academy, and at some point, if you're lucky, a police department will hire you.
You'll get picked up. It's no different than somebody going to. You go to a boot camp. Basically, in essence, for 3 months, 4 months, whatever, how many weeks it is, and you come out with a certificate. And I think that's one of the things is not necessarily people may not have the money to do that. But
True.
I already said that it's sort of like if you had to go to a community college, so to speak. Because I know in our town you have to have at least 60 college credits either way.
Correct. So again, but the challenge with the alternate route program is, the other 500 police departments in the state are picking those folks as well.
And that's the other problem. There's not that many academies in the state
that host that program. Correct.
Yeah, it's not easy. I think we're down to like 4 or 5 places in
the
state of New Jersey.
You're absolutely right.
I mean, there used to be Middlesex County used to have an academy, doesn't, but there used to be at least a half a dozen to a dozen counties that ran academies, and they just don't do that anymore.
They don't do it anymore. But once again, ultimate route is a one route, but also lateral transfers, and that's another issue. Other folks are looking for lateral transfers as well. So, but here's the good thing, and this is just my mindset, Mayor. It's going to be hard, right? But you have an opportunity to be innovative and creative, and really come up with something that no one else is doing. And so. I appreciate the challenge, and I'm looking forward to it.
What do you think is going to be the, moving forward in time, not just at Piscataway Township, what the toughest job is going to be for a uniform officer?
I think that...
Or maybe not job, it should say task for a uniform officer.
That's a great question. Initially, I was going to say, police-citizen interaction always been tough for years, right? We need to get better at that. I firmly believe in the guardian mindset. A little bit of empathy goes a long way. So I would like to. I think that police-citizen interaction still would be challenging because we recruit for different communities, right? And implicit biases, right? That is a challenge. So I always think that police and community interaction always be a challenge for law enforcement. We good at the technology stuff, but what we struggle with, right? What you always see on TV, right? That police community interaction.
Now that you brought that up, I want to just delve in that for a few minutes and tie it in with social media. A lot of times now people will post something online and out there and say in a public venue, and there's an expectation with the general public, the police department must have saw what I put out there. Why aren't they doing anything about it? It's no different than government services.
Right.
How does that dynamic change in law enforcement over the years?
It puts law enforcement in a bad spot. So if someone takes a video, that doesn't mean that the police have that video. And unfortunately, sometimes we get a hold of that video when it's a little too late. And that's tough. I mean, again, this world that we live in now is tough. Everyone has a camera.
Speaking of video, we encourage, with the next door neighbor, with the community neighbor watch program, we obviously ask residents to pick up the phone, call the police department. We have a community police section of the PD. If you want to get involved in your neighborhood, that's a great way of getting involved with you and some of your neighbors.
Right. I love that idea. I love the idea. Again, that's sharing the burden of policing. Operational. That's sort of kind of operational, right?
It's sort of operational.
Sort of operational, but again, I love that. Again, it's about sharing the burden of policing. And that's a true community. When my first week here, and I was receiving emails of folks never met in my life. Number one, supporting me. Folks I never met in my life. And what can we do to help you out here in Piscataway? And it was so appreciative, and that's the type of community I want to be a part of. And so I was very excited about that. So I'm really looking forward to again serving the people here in Piscataway.
So I basically we've got a few minutes left.
Sure.
I know you want to reach out to have the folks work in tandem with the police department. What could folks do in the interim to make their neighborhoods feel safe?
Well, it's the little things.
We've had some issues in some of the neighborhoods where, there's been some thefts of cars, and it's not just in Piscataway.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. But I think there's a general expectation people just leave stuff. Doors unlocked.
The doors locked.
Whether it's your cars or your
Right.
personal, your homes.
Right, and you're 100% right. And some of these cars are being stolen because the owner left the door open, or they leave the key under the mat. So just be mindful of number one. In terms of your vehicle, make sure you don't leave the keys in the car. Make sure the doors is locked.
Or there's nothing of value.
That they could see in the vehicle. You don't want to get anyone, pique anyone's curiosity because you got something valuable in the car. Those are the little things that you could do. And again, not to sound cliche-ish, but if you see something, say something. Everything matters.
Well, you know what? In this day and age, Director, I'm just surprised how many people actually will not pick up the phone and call because they think somebody else already did.
Yeah, and that's.
They think, oh well, one of my neighbors already.
Right.
And it's just.
And what I would say to that, call again.
Yeah.
Call again. Don't assume someone else call. You call again. So that's very important.
I mean, the worst case scenario is the dispatch center. Well, we've already gotten a call, or we'll send a unit over. I mean, there's that's what everybody's on the payroll for to go and show up.
Yep, and they will show up.
Yeah,
they will definitely show up.
Yeah. Last thing for the. What expectations you have amongst the rank and file, the officers now that you're just starting to get to meet?
So I think if we poll all the residents in this town, I think everyone want a reasonable portion of public safety.
Yeah.
That's not a lot to ask for.
No.
They want us to respond to calls. When we interact with folks, they want to be, there should be some empathy there. So again, it's just a reasonable portion of public safety. That's not a lot to ask for, and our officers will do that.
Yeah, and I think the general expectation is like when you live in a community, you should be able to feel safe within your community.
Absolutely.
And everybody has a lot of things going on in their lives. They may have kids, or they may be the primary care person for somebody within their family.
Right.
They may have 2 jobs or whatever, jockeying this around, and then when they come home or go away, there's an expectation that their neighborhood feels
should be safe.
Or their kids can go to the local parks.
Absolutely.
And play pickup games and not having some nefarious thing happen.
Right. That reasonable portion of public safety, and everyone deserves that. Everyone deserves that.
And the only thing I'm hearing is that, just because Director Stith is the new public safety director, he's not going to single-handedly resolve the speeding in individual neighborhoods.
No.
He needs cooperation from the neighborhood because 99% of the times in a lot of the neighborhoods, it's the individual residents within their own neighborhood that are doing
we talked about sharing the burden, right?
Yes. Yeah. So we're just slow down a little bit.
Slow down.
One thing I would like to mention that we've had some problems as of late. That we have folks that when the buses have the door open, the lights are going. We have a lot of cars that are either going around or whatever for whatever reason. That's becoming a problem. I mean, that's the first rule of thumb when you're taught in driver's ed. Obviously, when that bus arm goes out and the lights go flashing red, you're supposed to stop.
Right.
Not go around.
Yeah, and that's the issue. It's dangerous.
Yeah.
And if caught doing so, you will be cited.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I know we're going to reach out to the school district superintendent about, working with the bus drivers there areas, because I'm always concerned about that because, when a child's getting off the bus, that's their most vulnerable time crossing the street.
Yes.
You know,
Yep.
oncoming traffic. So, well, I want to thank you for stopping by on Piscataway. I hope the residents look forward to working with you. You have an open phone dialogue with them. You're going to be going to a lot of meet and greets and
Yes.
a lot of public venues coming up. So you're going to be very busy over the course of the next year and change. So.
Yeah. So in closing, once again, I want to thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to going to all those meet and greets, and I'm real excited to be here.
And he's really excited because, in theory, it's going to be less snow than Rochester. You know, with all that lake effect snow that they got up there. In theory, it should be warmer, too.
It should
but we'll
be,
see.
but-
I don't know. And with that, I want to thank Director Keith Stith for coming on the Eye on Piscataway. Now we're going to go to some different segments. Well, the 2025 tax season is upon us, and we're fortunate enough to have in studio as our very own town assessor, Elisa Stevens, who's been with us for a number of years. Most of the residents of Piscataway probably received a little index card talking about your evaluations. So Lisa, why don't you explain what those card is? Because some of the people, you know, when they get the card, they think it's the end of the world, but it's really not the end of the world. So Lisa, why don't you explain what that card means?
So we are mandated by statute every year to notify property owners what their annual assessment is going to be for the current tax year. So the card has your current 2025 assessment, it has your last year's assessment, 2024, and then what you paid in taxes in 2024. So the card is really for information. It's not to make anyone nervous or get anyone upset. But it's just to really tell you this is what your value is. And then if you don't agree with that value, call my office. We can explain how we came up with it. And if you still aren't happy with it, then you have an opportunity to file an appeal with Middlesex County Board of Taxation.
So how does that appeal process work?
So it could be done either way. Well, the forms are available online, but you have to file them. There's no online filing. So you can go to the town's website. We have a link to the County Board of Taxation, or you can go directly to Middlesex County Board of Taxation, click on the tab for tax appeal. What the appeal is going to ask you is some of the information that's on that card. We send you your name, your address, your block and lot number, what town, what your assessment is, and then there's a space that says, what do you think your assessment should be? You fill all that out and you provide proof. So it's just like kind of like going to court, but a little less formal. The county board wants to see why you feel like your assessment is not what the assessor has it listed as. So you have to find comparable sales. There's a time period between, our assessment date is October 1 of the pre-tax year. So for 2025, we looked at sales from October 1 of 2023 to October 1 of 2024. And
So it lags almost a year behind.
Exactly. So that's what we base the current assessment year on. It's always a year behind. If you find comparables that are less than what we have you assessed for.
Oh, so let's go back just to rehash that. So you have to find the comparables in that time period.
Yes.
So from October 2023 to /October 2024.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
If you find the comparables are less than, then there's a pretty good opportunity that the board would lower them. And I actually get a copy of the form too. So if that's the case, then I'm going to call you and we're going to have a conversation because my job is just to assess you at what your market value is. That's it. If you see the comparables are higher, then it's highly unlikely you would get a reduction. And as a matter of fact, you don't have to file the appeal. You can look for comparables before you decide to file the appeal, which is what we always recommend that any homeowner does. You can go out on the internet, all the information is there, what's sold, when it's sold, and you know, the market is what the market is. We don't control it, we just analyze it, and then we determine what the value is based on what people are buying homes for.
So you don't necessarily, as a layperson, you don't necessarily have to hire an attorney, or you could do a little legwork yourself.
Exactly. We always recommend, and we tell people when they come in the office, if they decide that's the route they want to go, it's like the form is easy. It's not a difficult form. You don't need an attorney to file it. There aren't, I wouldn't say, if you're commercial, you have to have an attorney. But if you're a typical residential homeowner, you can complete the form yourself. You just have to do a little bit of homework on your own, and you don't have to pay the fee.
There are sections, like for instance, if somebody had a major natural disaster or a house fire, what happens in a case like that?
So if it happens during the year, there's no recourse, honestly.
There's no recourse at all.
There
so like
isn't.
say, hypothetically, there's a house fire at your house, say say December of last year, 2024. Would they be able to petition this coming year to?
They could do that, but we always, if there's something that's going on at your home that you feel affects the value, and it's before January 10th, which is when I have to certify the
Which is
the
already
book,
passed.
Which is passed, then come in and talk to us first. Because there's an opportunity where if there's a fire or a flood or something that really is going to materially affect your value, we can make the change. You don't have to file an appeal. Yeah. If it's after we certify the book, then the only process to have a reduction would be through a tax appeal.
Through the county. And I hate to say this, that a lot of times that does happen.
It does,
that there's
unfortunately.
A tragedy or whatever that does happen there. And obviously, sometimes people can't, obviously they're not living in the homes, but they say, well, I'm not even living there right now because it's being reconstructed. Well, unfortunately, the state doesn't allow you as the assessor to go in and make that adjustment right then, right there.
Right, and I'll just explain very quickly why. The town, once the list is certified, the town bases the budget on my number.
Yeah.
So if the number is constantly changing, you can't budget. It would hurt the budget process. You wouldn't be able to collect what was actually needed to run the town efficiently because you don't know where the number is constantly moving. So the town would probably not collect enough money to do what we needed to do to operate.
So let's just also delve a little bit further in. For a standard home in Piscataway, what makes up the valuation of the house?
So for a standard home, these are the components: your land, and then we look at your actual improvements, and the improvements are everything except the land. Mm-hmm. So your physical home, if you have any accessory buildings, if you have a shed, if it's a certain size, in-ground pool.
Like for instance, I have a oversized shed, so anything under 10 by 10 is not taxed.
Exactly.
I have a 10 by 12 shed, which is taxed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So your shed, if it's over 10 by 10, if it's larger, in-ground pools, gazebos, those would be the exterior accessories. Then we actually look at the size of your home, what the square footage is, what's in your home, how many bathrooms do you have, how many fixtures are in your bathroom, is it a half, is it a full, is it maybe a full with a jacuzzi or extra shower, do you have a basement, is your basement finished? So anything that would add value, we're going to look at it, and that's the basics of how we come up with your assessment.
So for instance, if my wife browbeats me into renovating our kitchen, so what happens then?
So if your kitchen is renovated, and you will be able to sell your home now, because if you and your neighbor have the same house, but now you have the renovated kitchen and they don't, a prospective buyer is more likely to pay you more than your neighbor with the same house. So that you would receive, what would happen is we would do what's called an added assessment. So we would come out and say, what is the additional value that the renovated kitchen adds? And then you would pay a prorated amount of tax based on when it was completed.
Okay. Is there any other nuances on the interior? Like what if you have a new heating system, HVAC system or anything?
No. You need heat and you need air. So those are
it doesn't matter how old or new it is?
It does not. It does not. So if you have an older home and you replace your HVAC, or you get a new water heater, we are not assessing that.
Okay.
Those are things that you have to have.
What about fireplaces and things like that?
Fireplaces, they would be assessed. Wood burning stoves would be assessed.
So what other things like on the inside? What about special? I'm just throwing it out there just for the general public. Any typical lighting, type of bathrooms, any renovations in bathrooms that might be way different than the normal bathrooms?
Not way different. If you have, say your home is 50 or 60 years old and you never replaced the bathroom versus a brand new house, there's a difference in the value of that. Or if you decide to renovate your bathroom, just like if you renovate your kitchen. So anything that's going to add value, if someone would pay
renovate,
more.
I mean, you're not adding additional fixtures. You're just like, say, pulling out, putting in a new sink and the actual...
The fixtures.
Hot and cold water, right there like that. So,
yeah, flooring, tile, new fixtures, cabinetry, they would all be considered renovations.
Now, what about the exterior? Is there a difference between having a brick exterior or vinyl siding?
Brick is a little bit more. Vinyl siding and clapboard, that's all the same. It's not going to be any difference. But brick is slightly more, would value your house a little bit more than someone without brick.
So in your assessed valuation, are the sidewalks considered, if you have sidewalks?
No. Sidewalks are not.
What about curbing?
Curbing is not.
Okay. So the first question a lot of people ask me, Mayor, you guys are going to be renovating or reconstructing our street. I'm going to be paying more in taxes because there's now curbing and sidewalks in front of my home.
No, that's just something you're lucky if you have that. The town comes and redoes your street, but it does not change the value.
So it adds no value to the property. Okay.
Makes it nice and it's walkable and is looks aesthetically, it looks nice, but it does not add value.
Garages. What about garages? You got between a 1 and 2 cars. Some people have 3-car garages.
Garages do, and there's a difference between a detached and attached. So detached are a little less than an attached, and then the larger the garage, the more value it's going to add. So 1 versus 2 versus 3. We value it based on the square footage.
So even though the garage is not considered livable square footage, it's still part of the overall part of the building, the structure, and that's why it's added into the equation.
Right. It's not assessed as if it's a much lower rate than livable area, but it does add value, so we do assess it.
What if somebody doesn't want to let the assessor or the company that comes in to the house to take a cursory look?
If we are unable to gain access, then we're going to have to make some assumptions about what's on the interior of the home. We can usually see what's outside so that we can note, but we're going to assume that you have upgraded your kitchen, that you've done your bathrooms, that if you have a basement,
if you have a basement, you have a renovated
exactly.
basement.
Yeah, so that's the law. That's what we have to do, and we're not looking for anything. We're not looking at how clean your house is or any of that. We just need to see what's there so that we can only assess you for what you have.
So you could actually have a house that obviously maybe need a paint job or new siding out there, but because they didn't let in, they would have to assume that you have everything's brand new within the last year or 2.
Yes.
Last year you had roughly about 80 tax appeals that were filed on the residential side, and you said a quarter of them were adjudicated because they had never let anybody into the house. And they didn't have to go before the judge because they went over there and you got that done.
Right. So what happens is you still have to file the appeal because once the book is certified, that's the number, and the only way to change it is through that process. But if we look at your property information and say, hey, you didn't let us do the inspection last time, if you let us in and then there are things we need to correct, we will make those corrections, and if it leads to a value change, this is your new number, we agree to it, you sign a piece of paper, I file it with the Board of Taxation, and then that's it.
So what's the latest possible time that they can call your office up and ask, hey, can we have somebody come over and take a look at the property? Because like say if you lived in the North Stelton Fire District 4, which we just recently went through that. What's the latest date that can happen?
You can call us throughout the year, and we will do our best to get out there. But the window for the change, you have to file the appeal by May 1st.
Okay.
And then in order for us to make the change for the hearing, before the hearing, we would just need to know, I would say a week before the hearing date, and typically they're in June. So you have between maybe 30 to 40 days for the hearing itself to make a change for the Board of Taxation, but we will come out and inspect your home anytime during the year. It just may not result in a value change if it's not within that window. The earlier we do it, the better it is, because then the tax collector, once they get the judgments, can just adjust your third and fourth quarter bill. Otherwise, your bill will get adjusted, but it would just take a little bit longer for you to actually see any relief in your bill.
So that may be spilling over into the following year.
Yes.
All right, so I received the index card, and let's say hypothetically mine went up like $30,000 or $40,000 in well, not dollars, but in value. Some folks are probably taking their calculator out and saying, if they go by what the current tax rate is, they're probably saying, oh my God, I'm going to have a massive tax increase on their hand. What makes up the valuation of the pie shape of what comes for the taxes?
So your assessment is part of it, but then the budgets for, of course, the town, the county, the school, which is usually the biggest part of the pie.
Well, in our case, it's like 51%, roughly 51% of the pie, and I think we're at 24%, and the county's almost at 23%, and then you have the fire districts. So there is a disparity depending upon which fire district you live in. Right. Like the Arbor district may have a little bit more, even though it's the smallest because it's all residential. The Newmarket district has some of the corporate base in there, and then there's the corporate base in the North Stoughton, and then partially in the River Road corridor, the District 2.
Right. So do not take the new number and multiply it by the tax rate for 2024. That's not how it works.
And the reason why it doesn't work is because the municipality hasn't struck its tax rate yet, the school district hasn't struck its tax rate, and the county hasn't struck its tax rate, and the fire districts just had their vote from their budgets within the last week. So those are going to be certified very shortly. So at least those tax rates will be certified. So you can't go by what last year's tax rate is because it may drop. Now, I know already that we haven't introduced our budget yet. It looks like we're going to be dropping at least 4 cents on the municipality side.
Right. And just to reiterate, when you're if you decide to file an appeal, it's not on your taxes, it's on your value.
Yeah.
So I know people wait until they get their tax bill, but
that's too late.
That's too late. You have to look at your value, go out into the wide world web and look and see what things are selling for. And if you see that you're higher than that, then file the appeal. But don't wait until you get your tax bill, because at that point, there's nothing that can be done. You'd have to wait until the following tax appeal time, and then you're going to have a new value because Piscataway does annual reassessments.
Yeah. So, some people might go to me, hey, mayor or council member, what about those businesses? How do they pay taxes? Why don't you explain how businesses...
Right. So commercial, which would be, say, our offices, our little mom and pop, the stores, retail, and then industrial, and then we have the apartment complexes. They're assessed a little bit differently. Each one of them is assessed a little bit differently.
And they have different classifications on commercial.
Yes. So the apartment buildings is based on, most of it is income. All the commercial, we do look at income if they're income producing. Mm-hmm. Some places are owner occupied, so there is no income. And then if that's the case, we look at the market as well. What are similar buildings either in town?
Very quickly, what's the difference between incomers and owner-occupied?
Owner-occupied is a business that does not lease any space out. It's completely...
It's solely one business that owns the building.
Yes.
And they're just paying taxes.
They just pay taxes.
Yeah.
Income producing is if any portion of the property is leased. To someone other than the owner. So yeah, the apartments, if the industrial is leased and the commercial is leased, then we look at their income. And there's a formula for it. You look at it, you take out expenses, you capitalize it, and then you come up with a value. We still look at the market too. We say, well, what would a Wawa sell for? Or what has a Wawa sold for in Piscataway, in South Plainfield, wherever the closest business would be. And then we say, how much land do they have? And so that's the same. And then we look at both figures. What was the income? What was the sales approach comparison? And we come up with a number base, and they're usually similar. So, and that's how they're values are assessed. So a little bit different than residential.
So you have, say hypothetically, you have a large office commercial building slash, say on Centennial Avenue, say it's 100,000 square feet, and only 50% of it's occupied as income driven. What happens then?
We're going to look at that 50% that's occupied. So if it's 50% empty, then they're probably not going to pay as much as if it was 100% occupied, because we are looking at the income. So that would be the major difference.
So it's marketable square foot income.
Yes.
And that's the analogy for the folks out there, is that you got to understand is that when you see a vacancy sign out there, that there may be some square footage in here that's not occupied, and they're not necessarily paying the normal tax rate for a commercial property because it's vacant.
Right. So they're paying based on what the state, how the state says I can assess it. So if they're not fully occupied and the income is not at 100%, then that's what they're going to pay taxes based on. Once they become fully occupied, then we go back just each year. They're required to send me their income information. We take a look at it and we analyze it every year.
So what if they also do improvements to their structures and buildings? Is that the same as a homeowner?
It's the same as a homeowner. If they renovate, if they improve, if they do additions, then we go out and reassess based on what work they did.
All right, so everybody gets treated equally in that respect. One of the problems that we had almost 10 plus years ago is that we were getting really hammered with tax appeals on the corporate end. Why was that happening, Lisa? Why we were taking it on for almost 20 years?
The market was much different 10 years ago for especially the industrial market. Yeah. We are e-commerce, so we need distribution centers, we need warehouses, places to store the items that we're all online purchasing. A lot of the industrial and commercial was older.
It was considered antiquated for business purposes.
Exactly. It was not what they call Class A properties. So move-in ready, there would have had to been a lot of renovation to bring them up to what the individuals in that world were looking for at the time. Ceiling heights. I mean, a lot of different things that you have to look at now, especially for the distribution.
Yeah, it was very interesting that some of these buildings, they would look at it, they figure, all right, it would cost us X to renovate, or B, knock it down and build new. In a lot of cases, it was just like, hey, let's just knock it down and build new, because then we have a state-of-the-art.
Exactly. So yeah, that was really the main reason we were getting appeals. The market was just completely different. We had older commercial, we had a lot of older office space that really was not conducive to what that market was looking for at the time. So
when there's a tax appeal, what government entity shoulders the burden of refunding the taxes?
The municipality. So Piscataway is refunding.
Yeah. All right. So folks, this is very important to remember here. The reason why we keep current with the assessed valuations in our town is to minimize the corporate tax appeals, because the first thing that a tax judge is going to say to you, Lisa Stevens, is, what is your ratio at and how current are you? Exactly.
So that's exactly what happens. You go in and they look at the assessment. If the ratio is low, then they apply that ratio to that assessment, and that value is more than likely going to be outside of the range of value, and they're going to be successful, get a reduction, and then the town is responsible for refunding.
And then meaning the municipal government is responsible for 100% funding of money that we've already collected and given to the school district, to the county, to the library system, to the fire district. So it comes out of the municipal government's operating budget. And that's why we had to do this the last 10 years, because we couldn't afford spending anywhere from $3 to $4 million a year on funding a de facto. We were subsidizing those taxation districts, in essence, we were funding them because we were coming out of our operation budget, which means we have less money for services and improvements that we have to do on our governmental end.
That's exactly what was happening. Yeah, so when I first came here, and believe it or not, I've been here 20 years already. So
20 years, what's 20 years?
so that's what was happening. The industrial and commercial appeals were through the roof. And the amounts that, because the ratio was, I believe, probably 30 or 40%.
30-40%.
So you take that and apply that to a building that maybe was worth 500,000 and we had it on the books for 300, 3 times 4, the difference is like 40,000 or 50,000 or $100,000 times whatever the rate was at that time, which was probably $7, $8, $9 because of the ratio. And, you know, the town has to figure out how to refund that money.
Well, and that's the keys, because for budgeting purposes, what became a very problematic for municipal government, we have to guess what these tax appeals are going to be at the corporate level. And that's why the attorneys and the finance officer works with you, Lisa, and our outside consultants, because we have to put it in our budget. We have to do a guesstimate. And then again, you don't know what a judge is going to say. A judge may say, we disagree with you. It may be XYZ more. And then we have to take that out of our budget. And then some of this might roll over to the preceding budget year that we have to make up, because we don't have the money in the budget because somebody came in at a higher judgment call.
Right. And so you're right. It doesn't, keeping the assessments current helps on a lot of fronts. That's a big one with the tax appeal refunds. And it doesn't mean, because people say, well, they're still filing, but they're filing, but they're not winning.
They're not
That's
winning.
the difference. So, and if there's some discrepancy in the value, it's much smaller than it is if we don't keep them up.
Versus a large disparity.
Right.
Now, the other thing is, I know, I believe from what I understand is that the way the school funding goes is that one of the criteria is that you have to have current assessed valuation ongoing, and that is tied in with how much money that a school district will get. And I know one of the advantages for us, since we're keeping current, our school district's been able to get more money from the state because of that.
Yeah, I didn't realize that, but I had a meeting, I believe it was last year, with the administrator from the district and our finance director, and I was happy to hear that that was a result of what we're doing, even though we were doing it before. Like, I had no idea that the formula for schools was tied into
the
assessed value, but it was a nicety to find that out. But
it was actually helping them out.
It helps them out. It helps everyone out. The business owners, everyone's paying what they should. So it really is a win-win, I think, for everyone. And as a property owner, as a homeowner especially, your value, when I first came, some of the values were $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. That you knew your home was worth more than that. Now when you look at your assessment, you can say, you know what, I think that when I decide to sell, or if I want to take out a home equity loan, I have a great idea of what my value actually is before you go out into the market.
And part of that is market conditions, because, hey, listen, you know, Piscataway is a hot town to live in.
Just like with the residential, the homeowners wanting to come to Piscataway, the businesses do too. Look at, we have the Turnpike, we have 22, 287. It's just it's a very good location. Piscataway is fortunate to be where it is.
So roughly right now of the tax base, about 38 to 39% is commercial tax base in our town. And not many towns our size in the state of New Jersey have it that high, where the commercial base is almost at that high. So we're very fortunate enough. And that's why we're reinvesting money back into the community by fixing a lot of the roads in the neighborhoods, residential neighborhoods, and also the commercial areas. We're out to bid on the section of Centennial Avenue from River Road up to Nicebridge, which is a heavily traveled commercial area there. And we're looking to reconstruct it to make it more appealable to fill up any vacant buildings out there. And that's a good thing for our community.
It's a great thing, and when people come, I worked in a couple of other towns as well, and I always tell people when they come in my office, this is, and I'm not saying because you're sitting there, this is one of the most well-run municipalities that I've worked in. You have everything that a homeowner would want: good schools, parks, a rec center. You can commute to work easily.
And you have 2 train stations. You either have New Brunswick or Dunellen.
Right. So, and then the businesses look at that too. When they come in, when they're looking for towns, because they have to have people come to their places to work. So what's the workforce like? We have Rutgers.
Educated workforce. The
Yeah.
first thing they'll ask you, what is the education level of the workforce in this area to attract businesses there? And that's why we're working very closely with the county magnet schools to have educated workforce for and Rutgers University, because they're looking for folks coming out with postdoc degrees to work at some of these businesses.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the things that when you're looking at your value and when you're looking at your taxes, are you getting services? And I know that you're getting services if you live in Piscataway. So, and then if you look at us compared to the rest of the county, you have to put it in perspective. Our tax rate is the second lowest. Our values are, I think, the 3rd or 4th highest, and that's because we do annuals and because of all the amenities that are here. So, you know, no one wants to pay more than they should, and that's why one of the reasons why we do annual reassessments. So everyone is kept at the value that they should be based on market conditions.
And there's not too many places more in New Jersey where you're going to get all these amenities and have still low tax rates. So just to recap, if you do have any questions about the index card that went out, feel free to call Lisa and her team at the assessing office. They'd be more than happy to sit down with you, or if you haven't had the assessor come in to your house during this year, if you lived in the Fire District 4, to come in an assessment. And it only took, when they stopped by my house, it only took, like, the gentleman was only there for like 2 minutes. They just looked at the card, what was on the laptop, and has anything changed? No, nothing's changed, and that was it.
That's it. It's just that simple.
It's not that painless. So, but if you still want to have a philosophical thing and not let anybody in, it's a good bet you're probably paying more than you should.
Yes.
So with that, I want to thank everybody. Now that you got we got this information out there. Feel free, like I said before, contact Lisa and her team. We want to get the correct information out there, not some of the armchair critics that are out there online railing against something that is not factually correct. We want to make sure we get the correct information out there.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for stopping by. I am Piscataway, Lisa.
My wild Irish rose, the dearest flower that grows. You may search everywhere, but none can compare with my wild Irish rose. My wild Irish rose, the sweetest flower that grows. And someday for my sake she may let me take the bloom from my wild Irish rose. You may search everywhere, but none can compare with my wild Irish rose. My wild Irish rose, the sweetest flower that grows. And someday for my sake she may let me take the bloom from